Well, let's restart this. So I'm Jake. I work for SANS. Hi. So yeah, really. Yeah. So outside of SANS, I run a company, Rendition Infosec, and I woke up this morning to a reporter calling me about some ransomware in the UK, I believe, that was hurting a hospital, something about the National Health System or something, NHS, and so that was wonderful. I punted that call since unfortunately I was just waking up kind of thing, so punted that over. One of my other folks took care of that since they had been up for a couple hours being on the East Coast. But over the day, this turned out to be something really, really awesome. Well, okay, awesome versus awesomely, tremendously bad. Kind of depends on where you come from, right? Let's put it this way. It's an exciting time to be an InfoSec. There's no doubt about that. If you've been following the news recently, you already know it's an exciting time to be an InfoSec. This is going to be awesome. All right, so I apologize for the quality of the slides. These are not like top quality, the kind of stuff I like to throw a bunch of screenshots in. I mean, I have some of those, don't get me wrong, but I taught today, and then I got off. I think we agreed to do this at about 3 o'clock today or something, give or take, and so basically I had 2-ish hours by the time class was over to prep all these. So you don't need to take pictures of any of the slides. I'll release these and put them on a share and tweet it out. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll be more than easy enough to grab these. I'll have the slides posted within the hour, so within the hour of this finishing. All right, so as far as what we're doing tonight, quick overview, talk about kind of why we're here, what we're doing, what do we know so far about WannaCryptor. We'll actually look at some cool reversing stuff because I love to reverse engineer malware. Unfortunately, with 2 hours, I didn't have that much time. Luckily, and this is just dumb luck, I have another SANS instructor in the Forensics 578 class this week, happens to be Mike Murr. And Mike was in the back of the room today as we were talking about threat intelligence and actually cranking away at some of the malware. Mike happens to also be a reverse engineer. This is an awesome thing for me, right? So basically, as we finished up class, I went in the back and talked to Mike. Mike's like, hey, here's what I got. Check this out. And that really advanced the reversing piece, as far as me being able to crank out slides here. So great, mad props to Mike Murr. Really, really appreciate that. Another Mike, not to confuse anybody, Mike Banks, one of the employees at my company, helped me put together a couple of things as well. So certainly, again, props to those folks because I couldn't put something together in 2 hours, especially having taught all day without them. So want to look at the reversing stuff. Staying safe. What can you do to protect yourself besides patch? Right? Patch is the obvious one. I got that. And then I want to talk a little about MS-1710. This one's actually kind of interesting because MS-1710 is the vulnerability that's being exploited by this worm. Earlier this week, my company put out a blog post calling on Microsoft to release data around MS-1710. And there's actually an online petition that you're more than welcome to, I'll post the link for that a little bit later, that you're more than welcome to sign if by the end of this you feel the way I do, that Microsoft might owe us an answer. And again, if that's the case, we'll talk a little bit about that and kind of why we did that. Not that one, let me be very clear, we didn't write this malware, right? We just happened to have foreseen the future, that it was going to be bad, really, really bad, right? And by the way, too, I don't think this is nearly as bad as it's going to get. I think we're going to see worse. We'll talk a little about why in just a couple of minutes, and then a couple of closing thoughts. I'll take questions, and then we'll go about our merry way. So why are we even here? Well, 12 May, this morning, WannaCrypt appears, and it encrypts a bunch of data at NHS hospitals. Apparently, this is the National Health System over in England. And with NHS, basically, they are turning away ambulances. Today, as of the time of we're going to press, whatever, WEBCAST, we're looking at 16 hospitals currently hit that have diminished capabilities. This is obviously a big deal. Again, one of them at least has already reported that they are turning away patients and sending them elsewhere. Again, if you're a patient in need of care, this is obviously a bad thing. We saw this with Presbyterian, right? It's a Presbyterian hospital in LA last year. They turned away patients as well. Certainly, we've seen this We've seen disruptions of lesser impact to hospitals previously. I do a lot of work in healthcare with my company, and I can only describe healthcare InfoSec as roughly a train wreck. Does anybody in the room here do anything with healthcare? We work in healthcare? My hat's off to you. Buy these people a beer because they are working in some of the worst environments, period, right? Honest to goodness, it's like doing InfoSec in 1998. It's just out of control. So in any case, Telefonica is reportedly suffering outages. There has to be some sweet irony in this, that the Russian Interior Ministry was hit. I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not an anti-Russia person. But I do have a strong opinion I do have a strong opinion that the shadow brokers is likely, the shadow brokers who release this data are likely either Russian intelligence or probably fueled by Russian intelligence, right? Fueled by Red Bull, I don't know. Anyway, fueled by Russian intelligence. So the fact that the Russian Interior Ministry was hit somehow feels meh. It's poetic justice. A German train station in Frankfurt also shut down. FedEx was reported infected as well. They're already screwing up packages right and left. Interesting factoid, by the way. FedEx is not responsible for their guarantee if they have IT outages, because those are defined by FedEx as events that are impossible to foresee. I found this out actually 2 weeks ago when they had an IT outage that resulted in my package coming late. And I said, hey, at least I can exercise the guarantee. And they said, no. IT outages are unforeseen events. They treat them like acts of God, which is really, really interesting, because when you put an IT outage in the same category as you do, for instance, a blizzard, that seems a little bit warped to me. But hey, rock on. Hey, look, bottom line, if your FedEx package is late or encrypted for that matter, you don't get a refund. Okay, so what do we know about WannaCrypt, right? So how is it spreading? There's two key components, a worm and a ransomware package. The worm appears to be spreading using a leaked NSA exploit, Eternal Blue. Eternal Blue uses a special piece of shell code. This has been widely reported on in the last month. A piece of shell code called Double Pulsar, or that it installs an implant called Double Pulsar. Double Pulsar is really, really unique. It runs completely in kernel space. And this is really unique because if you think about 64-bit driver signing, if you think about what Microsoft does to help protect you, they require you to do 64-bit driver signing. Well, in this case, because the exploit is exploiting server message block, SMB, SMB, of course, lives in the kernel. Well, instead of the attackers compromising SMB and then injecting code into user space and then trying to figure out later, how could I load a driver back into kernel space, they just don't leave. They're already there, why not? Now, what can go wrong with this? Well, if you do anything wrong at all in kernel space, you don't get a Dr. Watson, you get a blue screen of death. Or if you're on Windows 8.1 or later, you get the purple frowny face of despair. But, point being, there's no room for error here, right? So, this double pulsar implant is really, really interesting. I don't have time to talk about all of this, but we've been doing a lot of scans across the internet for this. We being my company, Rendition, we've done a lot of internet-wide scans. We kicked one off today, this afternoon when I knew I was doing this. Unfortunately, I didn't judge my time right for getting all the data back. I will post, if you're following me on Twitter, I'll post the results of my latest scan after we break here. My lawyer will absolutely crucify me if I put IP addresses of infected victims up on the screen, as you can imagine, right? So I can't like go through and start doing some grep stuff and tell you what the current number of victims are. How do we know about the victims? Well, the Eternal Blue exploit actually sets up this double pulsar implant. And what happens here is it's actually patching SMB. This is a crazy advanced piece of shellcode, right? Because it patches server message block, which means when you communicate with SMB to this host, what ends up happening is there are a bunch of unused features in server message block. It's ridiculous. Server message block, by the way, is Windows file sharing, right? And so there are a bunch of unused commands in here, and this one's called, it's one of the dispatch tables in trans2, which is sometimes used to get directory listings in certain cases. And so they basically patch in this command, and you can tell if a machine is infected with double pulsar simply by trying to exercise that command, because you're going to get one of two response codes back. Either it's going to say, I don't know what you want me to do, command not implemented, or ready and willing, what do you want, boss, right? And so by scanning the internet and looking for, now I know what you're thinking first off. When I say scanning the internet and looking for SMB responses in an InfoSec crowd, you should be saying, hey, no, that's not going to work. No machines listen on SMB on the internet. I have news for you, my friends. When I first started this, right, back at the Threat Hunting Summit in New Orleans, started really doing internet-wide scans for this, we were at 5.2 million hosts on average at any given moment listening on SMB. I'm proud to tell you that number right now is down to 3.1 million, right? So good news, right? Good news, Double Pulsar and Eternal Blue have raised the security of the internet overall. Bad news, they have totally crippled the security of the internet overall, right? But basically, here as we look at this, we know, again, these are targeting machines running SMB. These are unpatched machines. Current status, malware has a kill switch. This is, I'm not sure why this was planned. I'm not sure if this was planned. Was this a demonstration? Was this I think this is just bad logic on the part of the attacker. The attacker put a kill switch into the malware. Basically, it would go try to resolve this domain. And this has become my new favorite domain of all time. Certainly has no good SEO there, but The key there is that if the malware is able to contact this ridiculously long and hard to spell domain, by the way, if you can type that 3 times without a typo, I'll buy you a beer, right? Basically, if it's able to resolve this domain, the malware exits. This is phenomenal, right? Now, well, particularly the worm exits. This is great, right? Because as soon as Malwarebytes figure this out, I think they're the ones that actually registered the domain. So they registered the domain and now it resolves. There's a couple of ideas on this because after it resolves, the malware doesn't do anything. This could have been a kill switch where the attackers could say, okay, go ahead and kill the worm. It could have also been an anti-reversing, right? Anti-reversing technique where in many cases when you run malware in a sandbox, it will resolve any domain, right? So you'll have a fake HTTP server running and a fake DNS server running, and whatever the domain is, it'll automatically resolve it. And this could have been trying to see, is it in a sandbox? Because if it is, go ahead and die, right? I don't know which one it is. I don't really care. At the end of the day, I'm loving this, right? Because this threat is starting to spin down. Now, don't get up and leave, right? Don't get up and leave because the threat is still there, right? It just so happens that this piece of malware in particular has been neutered, right? Tomorrow, or before tomorrow, before we go to bed tonight, at some point in the very, very near future, I predict somebody will repeat this little experiment without this faux pas, right? So if you're thinking, well, nothing to do here, time to walk, forget about it, right? Again, somebody else is going to do this. I can't believe it's taken this long, honestly. I mean, we're talking about more than a month now. This seems a little bit wild to me, right? There were some reports about different Bitcoin addresses. I only have one of them up at this point. There were a couple of reports about a couple of other Bitcoin addresses, but you can see they're not making a ton of money. Now, there were some early reports that they were making a lot of money. Here you're seeing a whopping 9 payouts to this particular Bitcoin address. This is not, yeah. I think another one of the Bitcoin addresses I heard earlier, there was one tweet that somebody sent out that talked about like several hundred Bitcoins, which is a lot of money. But then another tweet came out basically correcting that. Somebody converted the dollars to Bitcoins, and of course that makes it an order of magnitude more, more money that they're getting. Bottom line, this doesn't appear to have been a crazy, crazy expensive kind of trip for them. But again, this may be part of this. May be the fact that they've been neutered, right? So the malware isn't running at this point. Well, if you're already encrypted, you're toast, right? But again, as far as the malware propagating anymore, according to sources that we've looked at and according to the experimentation we did, it doesn't appear to run anymore because of that domain being registered. So I was really interested to see that, and again, some of this stuff, we talked about this a little bit in the threat intelligence class today, how people are people are creatures of habit. And they tend to fall into some of the same patterns. We actually outed we're actually able in some of our research work to find a hacker out of Ukraine a while back when we found a password that was being consistently used, a password that's consistently being used for a RAR file. Right? So attackers love RAR. He would encrypt the RAR file. And by the way, I'm not being gender neutral here or gender biased towards a he. We actually know it's a he, and I'll tell you how in just a second. This particular gentleman was using this RAR file, or this RAR password, and not this RAR password, by the way, using a RAR password. It was long. I think it was 12 characters. It looked fairly random. And we had no idea. He continued, no idea who he was, but he continued to use the same one over and over. And we kept doing Google searches for it, put up like a, hey, every 30 days, kick one of these off, see what's going on, nobody's doing anything, and we got a list of these things that we go see if there's anything. By the way, not just Google, go to Yandex. Okay, wait, hold on a second. If your company's okay with it, go to yandex.ru, which is Russian Google, and also go to your, goodness, I'm drawing a blank on the Chinese Google here. Baidu, thank you, Baidu.net, all right? So I was all in Yandex because I was thinking Ukraine, and then I couldn't think about China. This is amazing because, a couple of years ago, it was always blame it on China, right? Anyway, so this poor gentleman here apparently had been using the same password, and there was some Ukrainian gaming forum that got hacked. The passwords weren't encrypted, and the passwords got leaked out online. So now all of a sudden you have this super unique password string that's being used as a RAR password, which was also used as a password on this Ukrainian forum with an old Yahoo Mail address. Winning, right? Take that Yahoo Mail address and pivot over to MySpace. Oh yeah, now we're in the Wayback Machine, right? And you've got photos of this dude with his real name and some of his friends. People are creatures of habit. I don't know what this means. I mean, well, I do know what it means. It's a password. It's hard-coded in here. Does this mean something to somebody, or are they just making up the name WannaCry? I don't know, or playing on the WannaCry 2017. WannaCry @ 2, and this is actually an 017. In any case, so this gets passed in here. You can see, by the way, too, they mess with a hidden attribute, whoop-de-doo. Not really, that's not super advanced there. But what is really cool is that they actually unpack out of resources, basically binary resources, and the name of the resource is XIA. I don't know if that means anything to anybody either. I sort of thought for a second, maybe is that a play on CIA, but it's only like 3 letters long, so I don't know. Again, correlation not equal to causation, you know the deal, right? So in any case, the resource is there, and I thought, hey, it would be kind of cool to come out and talk about if you were going to do this, if you were going to start reversing one of these, and how would you actually extract this? And we cover this in the 610 course, but how would you actually extract out these resources? And CFF Explorer is an awesome free tool. Everybody likes free anyway. And so I love this tool because you can go in and it has this resource editor. And with this resource editor, I'm able to go in and find the XIA resource. And sure enough, when I click on it, it dumps it right into a hex dump. And you see that PK signature there? I know it's a little small for the folks in the back, but that PK signature means that we're looking at a zip file. Sometimes you're able to dump executables out. You see the MZ signature that we're all familiar with. And if I want to dump this out, seriously, it is honest to goodness as simple as writing a Python script. And no, I'm kidding. You don't have to do any of that. You just right-click on this and say save. Right? So right-click, save as, and you're done. Right? So we know this is a zip file. We save it as a zip. We go ahead and unzip it, and we see a bunch of these files. Right? So a couple of executables here. Task.dl, task se.exe. I don't know what the DL and the SE are supposed to mean. There's actually another executable here. I believe it's s.warning, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's another one of these executables, and that's actually the decryptor that would run if you provided it the key. Right? So once we unzip with the password, we're able to go get these files. You can see that one of these is a bitmap. That's the one that you've seen in every Twitter post today, where it shows the bitmap of the, hey, your files have been encrypted. It actually says, unfortunately, your files have been encrypted, right? Unfortunately, I mean, anyway. So I know how they got encrypted. This is a pretty easy one, right? But what's really cool here is as you look, there's another zip archive. Right? So pull out a zip archive here, and inside the zip in the resource, there's another zip. This one is not password protected. Right? So we can come unzip this, and you see there's a bunch of Tor stuff. Right? So if you don't have Tor already installed on your machine, this thing's going to communicate over Tor. You could imagine then your files, well, in general, look, if we're doing good network monitoring, good network blocking and tackling, you probably don't allow communications from your corporate network to Tor, right? Everybody good, right? We don't allow, yeah. I don't know what business use we could possibly have for this, but hey, again, rock on. Again, the attacker here is trying to put a little bit of extra separation likely between himself and a nice padded jail cell. Also convenience, right? So the attacker, I love this, actually registers a shortcut link because, of course, he or she wants to make sure that you can, of course, come back and find the decryptor immediately, right? So the decryptor is, again, one of those packages that's in the zip, the XIA resource piece. Okay, so staying safe, right? Why couldn't you patch? Well, look, the folks that work in medical can already tell you why you can't patch, right? And if you work in manufacturing, you know why you can't patch. And if you work in any other set of, we have weird equipment that has to be tested with every patch, you know why you can't patch as well, right? You can stay safe, though. We actually did an article with, somebody's going to hurt me here because I don't remember who the article was with now, but it's on my webpage. If you go on my media page on Rendition Infosec, we did an article, I think it was with IT World, but I won't swear to it, a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about staying safe because of the whole double pulsar threat. Right, and the eternal blue threat. And the number one thing that we can do, and by the way, not rocket science, right? Anybody who's taken the critical controls class or just read the critical controls knows the answers here. It's network segmentation. It's not rocket science, right? Number one thing, again, if you have machines you can't patch, maybe they shouldn't be on the regular VLAN. Maybe they need to be a firewall away. Even on your internal network, right? Maybe they need to be a firewall away. So if you can't patch, for instance, you're on a Windows Server 2003 instance, hopefully you've gotten rid of XP. I mean, if you haven't gotten rid of XP, my friends, I cannot help you, right? If you still have XP in mass, right, or Vista in mass, again, there's not a lot that we can do here. But again, if we're talking about Server 2003, my friends, I understand, all right? We've got a Fortune 50 client who has more than 2,000 Server 2003 boxes with no upgrade path. Right? So it's one of those things that they see in the future. They're like, yes, we plan to upgrade, right? But they don't really know when or to what, right? And so it's one of those very squishy upgrade plans, and I understand, right? I get it. By the way, how many Windows Server 2003 boxes are there on the internet? A lot, right? Anybody care to take a guess at the number? It's not actually 2 million. It's actually a little bit lower than 2 million. Yeah, so it's 585,000 at last count that are running web services, right? So the number is likely far higher than that, but these are the ones that are running web services. So again, 585,000 at last count. That was a week ago. I didn't bother rerunning the query today because who cares whether it's gone down by a couple hundred or up by a couple hundred. In any case, those are just the machines exposed to the internet. You get into internal networks and they are all over the place. With this particular exploit, with Eternal Blue, right, it is a killing field. It is a killing field. There's actually a string in the executable. I ran strings on this thing after it was dumped, right? So I ran strings on this. There's actually a string in the executable so that where the operator or the attacker is launching this exploit, it kind of shows some output. If you've run Metasploit, you guys know what I'm talking about. One that says, filling a barrel with fish. I'm not going to say this looks super reliable, but when the exploit writer puts a string in that says filling a barrel with fish, and then there's something about a boom barrel, something, or I don't know, boom got a fish. I can't remember how it works there. I think they're referring to shooting fish in a barrel, right? And honestly, again, you're never getting patches for Server 2003. They're just never coming, right? And so, well, of course, right? We all know this. This has been out of patch cycle for quite some time. Look, what about Windows 7, right? Windows 7, are we set? I don't know, right? I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the people I work with are running a 60-day patch cycle. Not because they want to, because patching is hard. Who thinks patching's easy? Exactly, right? It's not easy. And honestly, again, it only takes 1 or 2 boxes. Network segmentation then has to be the key, right? This is no longer an option. This is no longer something that's nice to have. Honestly, I think that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think we push to network segmentation here, and I think we push to it in a big way. And there's 2 things that I push here with my clients. Number 1 is router ACLs, router ACLs, router ACLs. 90% of your machines do not need to talk on 445. 90% of your machines do not need to be talked to on port 445. Right? This is SMB. 130. Go ahead and throw 139 in there as well for legacy. Right? If you're doing this right, if you're going to do it right. But again, most of these don't need to talk on that. They don't need SMB services. Now, for remote administration, you need to be able to get to those, and that's where you're going to open up jump boxes. But you're going to monitor the heck out of those jump boxes. Right? Those things are, that's like, it's the difference between, for instance, the police definitely want to protect me from getting mugged, right? But if the president is also down at the food court, he's going to have Secret Service all over him. And you need to put Secret Service all over your jump boxes, right? Whatever those admin boxes are that are allowed to talk on SMB to anything, right? We put Secret Service all over those, right? Or whatever your SOC is named. Actually, that's a really good idea for a SOC name, Secret Service MSSP or something along those lines. Anyway, so private VLANs, this is the other one. If your edge switches support this feature, use it. And if they don't, get new edge switches. I'm being serious about this. This isn't a joke. It's not, I know I joke a lot. I know I play around a little bit. But seriously, if your edge switches don't support private VLANs, get new edge switches. What is a private VLAN? Basically, with a private VLAN, you can restrict communication between endpoints. Meaning all of your workstations, you can set up on the switch and you can say, this particular port, right, so I've got port 20 that my workstation is connected to, cannot talk to port 22. But they can all go talk out to the default gateway, and they can all go talk out to the server, but workstation to workstation can't talk. And this is enforced at layer 2. Attackers don't beat this, right? So your switch is actually enforcing this. This takes a ton of load off your router, right? So off your router ACLs, and oh, by the way, if you're on the same subnet, the router ACLs aren't going to get involved anyway. If, for whatever reason, you can't do this because your switches are old or you're not licensed for private VLANs and you can't upgrade, as a short-term fix, not the right fix, but a short-term fix, right? Go to host-based firewalls. Limit communications on TCP port 445, especially between workstations. There is no legitimate reason, and I mean this, and I say this in a lot of classes, and I regularly have people challenge me, and I've been doing this for years, and nobody has been successful. There is no legitimate reason for one workstation to talk to another workstation on SMB. If you have a real business need for that to happen, you have screwed up your network architecture. I'm being dead set about this. If your workstation is operating as a print server, it's not a workstation. If your workstation is operating as a database server, it's not a workstation. It's operating as a file server, it is not a workstation and should not be in a workstation subnet. Period. End of story. Mic drop. Again, take this to heart, right? By the way, big bonus, This is all of the same advice that I give to tell people to go detect and protect against lateral movement. This is winning, right? Immediately, we're winning here, right? Even Chuck Norris approves. By the way, Chuck Norris, don't sue me. I'm not really saying you approve of this. Okay, so MS-1710. Actually, before I go into this, let me quickly talk about, with Chuck Norris behind me, giving that appeal of authority here, right? In InfoSec, if you'll indulge me for just a second, I tell people that in InfoSec we really have two jobs. Only two jobs, as it turns out. I went camping back in the day. I grew up in Virginia, right? I went camping back in the day, and it's 7, 8, somewhere around there, give or take. And I was deathly afraid of a bear walking into the campsite, right? With the Boy Scouts, deathly afraid of a bear in the Appalachia walking in and devouring me. And my scoutmaster, right, came in and he grabbed a bunch of string and he tied up a string that was about 6 feet long, give or take, between two trees and put some cans on it. Tapped the string, you guys all know what happened next. Cans rattled, whatnot. I said, okay, cool, and I went to sleep happy that a bear could not enter the campground. Now, of course, my 8-year-old mind failed to comprehend the fact that the campground was large, we had strung up 6 feet of string, the bear could step over it, and what does the bear care about the cans anyway? But, valuable lesson for InfoSec here, right? Because the reality is, our job is to protect that campground, right? The campground becoming our critical data. We need to actually come in and figure out how to go string up more cans. I don't mean a can all the way around the perimeter, right? A string of cans all the way around the perimeter. I mean up and down and left and right and all the way around, so that Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, diving through the lasers kind of thing couldn't get through there without making noise. That's step one. String up lots of cans, make spots for the attackers to make noise coming into the network. Number two is lower the noise floor, right? Lower the noise floor so you can actually hear the cans when they start rattling. If the cans start rattling in the middle of a Metallica concert, you are not going to hear them. Period. End of story. In a noisy Starbucks, you might not hear them. In this room, you're going to hear them. If your network is super noisy and you have lots and lots of failed logins and all kinds of other events, you're never going to hear this stuff, no matter how many cans you string up, right? That's it. Those are your two jobs in InfoSec. You can distill it down to that, right? Okay, remediate the attack afterwards, right? But generally, it boils down to just this. I'm going to talk about MS-1710 here for a moment. MS-1710 is a patch that patched a group of vulnerabilities that are Microsoft referred to as, or I guess Microsoft per the leaked data from the shadow brokers referred to as Eternal Champion, Eternal Blue, Eternal something else, Eternal Synergy, and Eternal Romance. Lots of Eternals, right? So 4 Eternals, and apparently they weren't very eternal since they got leaked, they got patched, but in any case, Microsoft patched all of these the month before they were released. This is kind of weird, right? Because the shadow brokers in January released a cache of data. They released, I think it was 66 or 67 files that they said were being detected by Kaspersky antivirus, which is, again, is another weird piece here, right? I mean, they're not Russian, but they specifically use Kaspersky antivirus for, anyway. So or maybe they're trying to look like Russia. I don't know. I have no idea. We can play an ACH exercise later and try and figure that out. But the shadow brokers release all this data. None of the exploits are in that. However, they release a full file listing of thousands of files, right, that are in the zip file that they have access to. Included in that are all of the exploit names. Now, presuming that these are really NSA's exploits, right, which I think NSA is not commenting on, but it seems like everybody else assumes this. All the headlines I saw today were leaked NSA tools used to create WannaCry, right? So we'll capitulate in this case that everybody seems to think that. We'll go ahead and roll with it. The exploits themselves were kept secret, but in January, somebody knew that the shadow brokers had these exploits. Had reason to believe they had these exploits. They leaked 67 files from other folders. Reason to believe they have the exploits. Microsoft then, again, this is January, early January, Microsoft mysteriously patched the exploits in March, right? So these vulnerabilities get patched out in March. After, for the first time in history, they missed Patch Tuesday. February, there was no Patch Tuesday. This is really interesting. I talked to Dan Gooden, one of the reporters over at Ars Technica. Dan put together a great piece I had very little to do with, right? He just kind of calls once in a while and we chat, but it was really interesting. I thought it was cool. He really said, hey, Microsoft owes us an explanation, right? You don't just skip a Patch Tuesday and we don't talk about why. And I actually tend to agree with this, right? I think that this is kind of we've kind of come to believe this, right? I mean, I start salivating every Patch Tuesday because you know what the day after Patch Tuesday is, right? Exploit Wednesday. And so, in any case, right, we get the Patch Tuesday come out, Exploit Wednesday comes around, there's no patches, there's no exploits. Because one of the things I do is patch diff the Look at the patch, I look at the original, find the vulnerability, write an exploit. Is it an O-day? No, but it's a 1 day, and I know most people have 60+ day patch cycles, winning, right? As far as I'm concerned, it's an O-day then. Well, so I think Microsoft owes us a few answers here, right? For one, I would like to know how the vulnerability was disclosed. I think Microsoft sort of owes us an answer here. I'm a Microsoft customer. I think we're all, some way, Microsoft customers in the room here. I feel like Microsoft kind of owes us an answer here. How was it disclosed? I understand if NDA prevents them from doing that, but I at least like a binary of someone notified us or we discovered all of these ourselves. I'll be honest, if they say they discovered them all themselves, I don't think I'm going to believe it anyway, but cool. Okay, so that's number one. I think number two that I'm looking for, if you can't say who disclosed it, I would at least like to know when was it disclosed. If the answer is Shadow Brokers released their list of files, I think on January 8th. If the answer is it was disclosed on January 10th from a private researcher, anyway, right? So the next thing I want to know is about telemetry. Microsoft collects telemetry on you. This is obviously a big deal with Windows 10 because they're collecting way more telemetry on you. But from the beginning of Dr. Watson, Microsoft has been collecting crash files. And when your machine crashes or when a process crashes, you have the option, you've all seen this, to send that data to Microsoft. What happens with that? Well, it turns out that if you're the US government, you end up putting the Dr. Watson IP address in the Grizzly Step report. Did you guys read this? Right, so the Grizzly Step report actually had a Dr. Watson telemetry IP in it as a Russian, basically it was one of the indicators of compromise, right, for Russian hacking. Anyway, bad joke, never mind, whatever. Anyway, so Microsoft collects this telemetry, right, and they have lots of this. When your machine crashes on reboot, it says, hey, your machine had an unexpected shutdown. Would you like to send anonymous data to Microsoft? It is anonymous. Well, sort of, right? It's anonymous in the sense that Microsoft probably doesn't know directly who you are, but can probably start looking through that telemetry. At a minimum, they can start doing what we call an analyze -v, and they can walk back up the stack trace for the crash, and they can tell where the crash occurred. Now, in the case of kernel exploits, this MS-1710 definitely is, this isn't 100% reliable. Because sometimes the kernel exploit tweaks something and then it takes a couple seconds to crash and the crashing thread is over here and the original corruption's here. But given enough of those crashes, you're eventually going to come back to, well, how's the whole thing working? Has Microsoft done this before? Absolutely, it turns out. MS-08067, Configure, right, the vulnerability used for Configure, Microsoft actually wrote a blog post about how they used the telemetry to find the vulnerability. It's not inconceivable that Microsoft used telemetry to find MS-1710. If that's the case, I'd like to know that. Again, as a customer, as a paying customer of Microsoft, I would like to know how long this vulnerability was in the wild, how many people exploited it. If they know for sure that I was one of the people hit, do they have an ethical obligation to let me know? I certainly think so, right? I mean, if they know it, if I'm sitting behind some, in my case, I have a static IP address, right? My business has a static IP, actually several static IPs. I think it's pretty easy for them to look those up and find those pretty quickly, or do some work with Comcast and basically get back to that static IP and ultimately find out that I'm the customer. Certainly other people have reverse DNS lookup, and that would be also pretty easy. So when I come back to this, I step back and think, does Microsoft have an obligation to release some of this data? I think yes. I'm really, really interested to know, did the rate of exploitation increase after January? Why am I interested in this? Because they released the files in January. They released the file listing in January. The shadow brokers did. Did they step back then and start really increasing their exploitation pace, right? If that's the case, knowing that they may release the whole package at some point. An alternate theory is, by the way, right, that there's absolutely no malice, no cover-up, no tinfoil hat kind of stuff going on here, and the shadow brokers noticed in early April that the patches had rolled out in March. These vulnerabilities were now patched, and they said, hey, let's go wreak havoc upon the world. I don't know, right? I have no idea which happened, but I would really like to know, and as a paying customer for Microsoft, I think I have a right to know. I don't want to write to their internal data. I would just like them to be transparent in their actual accountability to us, the customers. Anyway, so this is unprecedented, right? I've had a couple of people in the press contact me about this. We wrote a big blog post on this earlier in the week. I think it was Monday we released it. In any case, this is unprecedented. A couple of folks said, well, you can't expect Microsoft to do this. Well, they did actually write their own blog post about how they use telemetry to define MSO 8067 and how long it had been exploited in the wild before they patched it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think this is too unprecedented, but okay, I'll even take that this is unprecedented. This whole event is unprecedented. We've never had a leak of US intelligence tools or any intelligence toolkit, network exploitation toolkit, containing O-days / just patch days, whatever you want to call it. I guess it was, what, 15, 18 days between patch and release? We know, I mean, look, I've just in the last year stopped reliably exploiting MSO 8067 inside networks. It's 2016, right? So rolling back last year is when I stopped being able to reliably. I used to be safe pulling the money out of my pocket, throwing it down on the desk and saying, I will find a box inside your network vulnerable to a vulnerability patched in 2008. This impacted way more machines than we saw with Conficker or MSO 8067. Again, there's never been a leak of these before. If you're interested in signing the petition requesting that Microsoft release this, go hit the bit.ly link. Certainly, again, we'd appreciate that. I really think that there's some accountability here, and I think if not now, when, right? I mean, again, if Microsoft's going to release data about stuff now, I can't imagine when they're going to do this. Excuse me. As far as closing thoughts, big takeaways here. 60-day patch cycles are not okay. I have customers that routinely, they darn near dislocate a shoulder, patting themselves on the back when they tell me that they can patch 95% of their machines inside of 60 days. The other way that you reward that is, after more than 60 days, at least 5% of your machines, or up to 5% of your machines, remain unpatched to critical remote code execution vulnerabilities. And when you word it like that, that doesn't sound so awesome, right? But 60-day patch cycles aren't enough. Be ready for more attacks like this in the future. And by the future, I mean tomorrow, tonight. Realistically, I can't believe it took this long. I seriously can't believe that it took this long to see a worm exploiting, you're using these exploits with Eternal Blue. Attackers are getting more sophisticated, and they are going to benefit immensely from the CIA and NSA leaks. All right, so the shadow brokers and the Vault 7 stuff, again, capitulating, even though neither of these agencies have said these are our tools. We'll just go ahead and roll with the WikiLeaks piece. By the way, speaking of WikiLeaks, don't forget they have a trove of CIA hacking tools that they have not released. Well, to us. They've not released to the world. Two facts, very quickly. Somebody gave WikiLeaks those tools. We have no idea who that was, but they still control a copy of those. And we have no idea who else WikiLeaks has given them to. I'm not going to spout out any country names here, potentially, right? But that kind of keeps me up at night just a little bit, right? Realistically here, as we talk about how big is this attack surface, right? Internally, inside your networks, I have no idea. But we've been running consistent double pulsar scans. Remember I told you before that double pulsar, we can, by interrogating SMB on the internet, we're able to, for internet-connected hosts, right? I'm not inside a bunch of people's networks scanning because that would be illegal. I'm not actually accessing these machines because, as you can see with this face, I am too pretty for jail. FBI, if you're watching, right? So I'm not actually accessing these machines. We have talked to some of these machines because a lot of them just will accept an anonymous session and will happily tell you their host name and whether or not they're a domain controller, an Exchange server, or a SharePoint server. And wow, there are some pretty scary results there. I didn't have time to put this on a slide. I kind of ran out of time prepping this right after class. But our high watermark for these scans, we ran one of our first scans in mid-April, and we found originally about 10,000 hosts online that had double pulsar installed. Now, something to know about double pulsar is that double pulsar is not a persistent piece of malware. When you run the Eternal Blue exploit, when the attackers run the Eternal, which by the way, it was rolled into Metasploit the day after it was pushed out to the world, right? So you have, I think it was April 14th maybe, the exploits get released, and April 15th, the day after, you have it in Metasploit, in a branch of Metasploit. Now it's in core Metasploit. So this isn't something like you have to be this tall to ride the internet kind of thing. You have to be this tall to be able to do this, right? It's not very difficult here. So we had around 10,000 hosts infected. Now again, I want to be very clear here that these are an absolute floor number of hosts that were infected with this, because as a machine reboots, which happens a lot, particularly with home users, that goes away. Double pulsar goes away. So you exploit with Eternal Blue, double pulsar is automatically loaded into memory. That's what we're checking for. And if after that host reboots it hasn't been exploited again, that means that in our next scan it won't show up as infected. On the 27th, we hit our high, or sorry, on the 25th, we hit 56,000 hosts. On the 27th of April, we hit our high watermark of 156,000. 156,000 machines connected to the internet, all infected with double pulsar. Outstanding, right? I don't know whether this is because of patching, because again, I cannot be any clearer about this. I am not scanning these hosts to check if they're vulnerable. I'm purely checking to see if someone else has already exploited them, right? Now, in every case here, I believe that attackers, after they exploit, are dropping persistent malware that does indeed persist between reboots, right? So again, when I say this is a floor, I mean this is an absolute floor. The number of hosts infected has to be much, much larger than this. I'd estimate, just back of a napkin estimate, probably north of 200,000. But 156,000 was our high watermark, and I actually have the IP variations between these. I'll publish a paper on this eventually. On the 1st of May, we've got 59,000. You start to see another dip. On the 29th of April, we've got 78. On the 1st of May, we've got 59. On May 9th, we ran another scan. That was 32,000. So we see a dip, right? So May 9th, we see we're down to 32,000, and I'm watching an uptick today. Not surprisingly, right? So already tracking an uptick. I'll post my numbers after we're done with this. It took me a little too long to pull the data off the server as we were getting ready to go into this, and I can't drop the screen here because there are going to be IP addresses there, and my lawyer would absolutely, he'd poop an egg, right? It wouldn't be a pretty picture if I put IP addresses up here, particularly on the WEBCAST thing. So again, I'll tweet this out. I'll also tweet out a link to these slides. At this point, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I thank everybody for their time. I know it's been a busy day. Certainly has for me as well. Any questions about this? What we know about it so far, where it's going next? Okay, network segmentation is key, right? This is no joke, guys. If you take nothing else away from this, it's network segmentation all the way, because you are T-minus minutes to hours before somebody does this again without a kill switch that we can turn off. They could have done a better kill switch, by the way. They could have said, if it connects to this domain and exchanges this PKI, right, so basically signed with a private key, then we'll go ahead and shut down. They didn't do that. Actually, it sounds like I'm giving ideas to malware authors, but trust me, they've already thought of this, right? So, sir.
Yeah. So, you said that the kill switch domain has been registered.
That's correct. Kill switch domain has been registered.
So, it sounds like, I mean, not that we're safe or anything, but I'm just like, is that should be enough to at least block a lot of the propagation?
Well, this malware blocks the propagation for. That's accurate. This particular variant of the malware, it blocks this propagation for. We haven't seen variant 2 yet. I say this as if I'm positive there will be a second variant, because I am.
Right.
So.
Have we seen infection on them much in the States yet? It seems mostly in Europe.
We have actually seen some infection in the United States. Yeah, totally. So a lot of this comes down to ISPs blocking. Some of the European ISPs got in, and we believe they're doing some blocking on port 445. And I can say that because of some of the places that I have honeypots at and some of the scans that we ran. We're getting some different results as we run scans from some locations in Europe versus out of Europe. So I think there may have been some ISP work there that's possibly keeping some of the world safe. But again, that's not going to last. And again, once this gets into your networks, it's game on, right? It's a killing field inside of networks. Sir? I answered the question. Is this the internal network question? Yeah, it's going to be a killing field, bloodbath. Sir?
Just an observation. You were wondering where the XIA comes from?
Mm-hmm.
The plausible explanation for that? Okay, so Russians have a hard-on for the CIA. Most third world countries do. That's nothing new. In Russian, the word for hacker is a cognate. It's pronounced hacker. And if you use the English characters, they're actually the same letters as Cyrillic as in English. X-A-K-E-P. XIA. Hacker Intelligence Agency.
Okay, so XIA in basically converting Cyrillic to English or Cyrillic to Romanized alphabet could be XIA, so correct me here, the Hacker Intelligence Agency, right? So I'm not a Russian linguist, I learned something new, that's awesome, right? I like that explanation, I really like that explanation. Thank you. Sir?
Are these slides available?
Yeah, again, follow me on Twitter. I'm going to post a link out. I'll post these as soon as we get done here. I want to throw my new double pulsar numbers in. Just for what does it look like right now, and then I'll get these up on a slide share and post it. I'll go ahead and again drop the link in Twitter. So, sir.
What about the people that are infected now? Are they having to pay the ransom then?
So what about the people that are infected now? Are they having to pay the ransom? I mean, look, just like every other ransomware event, do you have to pay? Should you even pay? The short answer is if you want your files back and you don't have backups, then I would say yes, definitely you have to pay the ransom, right? Now there's the philosophical question of should you pay the ransom, right? And I have strong opinions about this. The businessman in me says yes, absolutely pay the ransom because at the end of the day, if that's what gets you back online the quickest, that's what's responsible to the business. Look, seriously, in InfoSec, we are a cost center, not a profit center. And the quicker we realize that, the better off we are in dealing with the business. Again, even though every piece about me says don't pay a ransom because you're encouraging this kind of bad behavior, I have to say if that's what's best for the business, we're going to pay it and pay it right now. And in fact, we have paid ransoms for a huge number of clients of ours to get them back online and back online right now. And so, sir.
With that in mind, I noticed in the bottom left of the application, there's contact us. What does that do?
Yeah, so there's in the bottom left of the application, there's a contact us. That's actually going to a .onion address, which is on Tor, and of course they've installed Tor for you, as we saw as we unpacked that XIA reference. So they've installed Tor for you, so even if you don't have Tor, don't worry, they're good. You can contact them. Basically, the idea there is if you need, sometimes, and we've seen this actually in other ransomware variants, where basically attackers have whole self-service things. In fact, they apologize to you in the chat room. Like, I'm so sorry you've been infected like this. It really is a shame. And they seem conciliatory, but at the end of the day, they're taking your money. Right? And so it is a shame, but you will have to pay to get your files back. So some of them are in chat rooms. I haven't been on this one. I know it drops to a .onion address. I'm sure it's either a dead drop or an actual live chat. It wouldn't surprise if it's a live chat. So any other questions? Anything online, Ben? No? To go? Okay. Or spinning by too fast? Okay, rock on. Sir?
Just a comment that I had heard from Webroot that up to 25% of people that think pay the ransom don't get the decryption key anyway. So just another reason why I want to not pay.
Now, is that specific to this, or is it specific to ransomware, generic to ransomware in general? Okay, so for the folks on the webcast, this is, and again, I don't have the source on, I haven't seen the source directly, I'm getting a second hand in the room, that up to 25%, according to Webroot, up to 25% of people that pay a ransom don't get the key anyway, yet another reason not to pay the ransom. When I look at the cost of most ransoms, the cost of most ransoms to your average business don't pay for the first hour or two of consulting. Don't pay for the first hour or two. Don't pay for the first minute and a half of downtime that they experience. And so even if I rolled into it with the knowledge that it was a 50-50 split, I'd still pay the ransom on the hope that I won that coin toss. Because even in this case, we're looking at $300 to $600. Most ransoms generally are between $150 and $500. And look, the criminals have figured this out. They do a lot of A/B testing, right? They figure out where's the sweet spot where grandma is most likely to pay to get her photos back, right? Where people are most likely to pay and not just say, the heck with it, I'll hope that maybe these come out, a decryptor comes out for it someday. So again, they're usually drop in the bucket kind of money. So I would still pay no matter what. Again, as a business-focused idea, I'd pay no matter what in the hopes that I get it. But I understand the point. You have no guarantee. There's no money-back guarantee. Sir?
Can I just mention that 75% is better than some ISPs in terms of customer service?
Wow. Okay, yes. So 75% hit rating is better than some ISPs for customer service. Thank you for not naming any ISPs. I don't like to get sued. Sir?
So you mentioned paying the ransom is more cost-effective at a business perspective.
Almost always, yes.
Most of these, they require Bitcoin.
Yes.
Significant resources in order to get that set up through a bank. You're doing it by yourself. So you have to go to a security consulting firm to pay it for you.
Yeah, so the question is, kind of paraphrase the question, the ransoms are almost always paid in Bitcoin. Most, not surprisingly, most small to medium to large businesses don't have Bitcoin reserves hanging around. How do you do this very quickly? Obviously, too, another concern. Sometimes, by the way, one of my big pieces of advice here, and I'm going to parlay your question for just a second, but I promise I'll come back to it, is for the love of goodness, do not get in a chat room with an attacker and say, my lawyer is here, right? My lawyer is here and we will track you down. This is whoever Big Corp is, and you messed with the wrong person this time, because your ransom goes from tiny to really, really large. Right? Again, don't do that. Just play the whole odds, and then also don't go to the bank. Don't go to Coinbase or wherever you would go to buy Bitcoin. Register an account as whoever. Right? You want to keep this anonymous. Like, you want to pretend, at least as long as the attacker's willing to pretend that you're a mom and pop shop, you pretend that you're a mom and pop shop. Right? So again, where do you get the Bitcoins quickly? Yeah, again, there are security firms. I know we do it. James Tarala's firm does. And again, we're doing this for our customers. It's not, I never woke up one morning and said, you know what I want to do? I want to create a Bitcoin wallet, lots of Bitcoin wallets, so we can anonymize these over multiple transactions. Buy some Bitcoin, hold on to it just in case clients call us, so that we can. I never wanted to be in banking. I never wanted to be in Bitcoin. It comes down to client demand. And you're right, it is difficult to get done, but I say difficult. It's relatively difficult because you think about procurement departments, right? And them saying, now hold on a second, you want us to do what? Right? You want us to go use a corporate credit card to go buy Bitcoin on Coinbase, and normally there you have too low of a limit, right? When you're establishing a new account to buy to the, and it's not anonymous, and there's all kinds of other problems with this, right? So yes, if you haven't prepped for this contingency and you're going to pay, contact somebody who can pay for you, right? So again, like I said, Tarala's firm does it, our firm does it, and again, it's by customer. I'm sure other firms do it as well. I'm at a loss to tell you who. If you ever need somebody, we're right here, right? And we can happily pay a ransom for you. I say happily, right? We'll pay the ransom for you. Obviously, we'll bill it back to you, but we'll pay the ransom for you and get you going, right? With a 75% success rate. But our honest success rate's been quite a bit better than that, honestly. I would say we're probably close to, I think the 75% number is caused by a couple of things. I think it's caused by people thinking that Bitcoin is not easy to use, right? Let's go ahead and say that for your average person infected with ransomware, can we agree that most people infected with ransomware are probably below the computing power curve? And that to use Bitcoin effectively and understand how Bitcoin works probably has to put you up above the general computing power curve? And so now you have this mismatch here. And I think a lot of people that think they've paid probably haven't, or have paid to some other random wallet that will, right? And so as far as the attackers are concerned, probably haven't paid. Our success rate's north of 95%. So, north of 95%. So, and again, for the ones that weren't there, their .onion addresses were shut down too. So I don't know if it was a takedown or a loss of ISP or who knows what, right? But again, we've been pretty successful with it. So I would expect that anyone in this room here would have the relevant knowledge to be able to get that cranked out. I think the 75% number is artificially low, and I think that's why. Anybody else? Okay, well, that's it. Hey, for the folks on the webcast, appreciate you coming out. Folks here, I appreciate you coming out. Yep. And I can't help the folks on the webcast, but for the folks here, I actually have little cards that are the 10 Commandments of Exploit Mitigation. If you want any of these 10 Commandments of Exploit Mitigation written in true 10 Commandments form, come grab these. And I have stickers up at the front as well. Stickers?